Welcome to Max Asian. There are dramas that arrive without fanfare, without massive campaigns, without the noise of big premieres, and yet they settle into you in a way that no viral phenomenon ever manages to. They're the stories someone passes along in silence, almost like a secret, that end up keeping you up at night. Today we're going to go through 30 of those gems that the algorithm never found for you, with romances that hurt, characters that feel real, and endings that aren't easy to forget. But before we start the video, it would mean a lot if you took a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for your support. Number 30, love scene number. 4 women, 4 ages, 4 versions of love that no one ever teaches you how to handle. Dua is 23 and dating 3 men at the same time while studying psychology, convinced that this is how she'll better understand love. Ha-Ram is 28, works as a teacher, and on the day of her wedding decides to walk out without looking back. Banya is a 35-year-old university professor who suddenly finds herself inside something she never planned for. And Chung-kyung, at 42, discovers that the marriage she's been in for 20 years wasn't quite what she believed. Each story is its own episode, with its own rhythm, its own pain, and its own way of asking uncomfortable questions about what we really want when we say we love someone. This omnibus drama doesn't try to give you easy answers or perfect characters. Kim Bo-ra, Shim Yoon-woo, Ryu Hwa-young, and Park Jin-hee build women so real that at some point they stop feeling like characters. Some segments connect more than others, but taken as a whole, it's an honest, mature portrait of love at different stages of life, with no filters and no cheap romanticism. Number 29, love affairs, in the afternoon. Sun Ji-eun moved to a small town for her husband's job and stayed there, trapped in a life that repeats itself like an empty echo. Her marriage is cold, her routine is predictable, and the loneliness she carries has no name but weighs on her all the time. Until Yoon Jung-woo appears, a local biology teacher, quiet and honest, who doesn't offer her promises or salvation but something simpler and more dangerous: real attention. What starts as everyday coincidences turns into something neither of them quite knows how to stop. This drama doesn't romanticize infidelity or justify it, but it doesn't judge it harshly either. That's exactly what makes it so hard to let go of. Park Ha-soon perfectly conveys that mix of guilt and need that turns Ji-eun into a character you can't help but empathize with, and Lee Sang-yeob gives Young-woo a restrained humanity that makes their on-screen connection feel painfully real. The pace is slow and some episodes can drag, but every second of tension between them is worth the wait. Number 28. Love cells. What happens if the part of you that knows how to love is about to die forever? That's the nightmare facing Ma Dae-chung, an unemployed guy who hasn't fallen for anyone in 9 years and whose last love cell is so weak it barely exists. To save it, Navi appears that cell transformed into a magical cat who takes human form with one single goal: getting Dae-chung to fall for his crush, actress and singer Seo-rin, before it's too late. What follows is a chaotic, tender, humor-filled journey where the protagonist's inner thoughts come to life as characters, and where the most unexpected love ends up growing in the last place anyone expected. Kim Yoo-jung was very young when she filmed this, and you could already tell she had something special. Her energy as Navi is magnetic and contagious. The series has a light, fairly absurd humor that doesn't always land, but when it finds its rhythm, it's impossible not to laugh. It's short, fun, and perfect for a no-commitment marathon. If you're looking for something that lifts your mood without asking too much of you, Love Cells delivers. Number 27, More Than Friends. 10 years holding on to a feeling that never quite turned into words. Kyung Woo-yeon and Lee Soo met at 18 and since then have been orbiting each other without ever closing the distance. She's a calligrapher who spent a decade waiting for him to finally see her. He's a photographer who spent that same time not quite sure what he has right in front of him. Between misunderstandings, perfect moments that shatter at the wrong second, and a third person who complicates everything, this story will have you on the edge of your seat screaming at them to just say it already. Ong Seung-woo does solid work, building a character who mixes indifference with moments of genuine vulnerability, and Shin Ye-yoon makes Woo-yeon likable even when she makes decisions that are maddening. The story drags a little in the middle and has some episodes that stretch the tension more than necessary, but the slow burn works well, and the final result leaves a bittersweet feeling that stays with you for days. Number 26, The Package. Yoon. So is a tour guide in Paris who has spent years accompanying strangers through a city that feels increasingly foreign. Her job is to help others live beautiful moments while she carries a heart that's been gathering dust for a long time. The group she gets this time is a particular mix. An ex-couple who still have unfinished business, a father and daughter who don't know how to talk to each other, and Sanma, a guy whose girlfriend left him 3 days before the trip and who tries to process it all with a blend of clumsiness and unintentional charm that ends up being more endearing than it looks. What makes this series special is its quiet pace and its ability to make you care about people you didn't know. Young Yonghua and Lee Yeon-hee build a connection that doesn't depend on grand gestures, but on small conversations in Parisian cafes and nighttime streets. The cinematography of Paris is gorgeous, and the OST accompanies each scene with exactly the tone it needs. It's not the most intense romance in the catalog, but it's the kind that leaves you wanting to book a flight. Number 25, You Are My Spring. Imagine this. A murder takes place in the building where two people live who carry traumas that have gone unhealed for years. Da-young works as a concierge at a luxury hotel, is sweet and resilient, but carries a childhood wound that never fully closed. Ju Young-do is a psychiatrist with eyes that seem to read what goes unsaid, and an emotional distance that works as a shield. When their paths cross in the middle of an investigation that brings them closer than expected, what grows between them isn't euphoric or instant, it's slow, careful, and deeply necessary. This drama knows that healing doesn't look spectacular, and so it shows it honestly. Seo Hyunjin and Kim Dong-wook have an on-screen connection built through glances and silences more than elaborate dialogue, and that works. The mystery subplot doesn't always match the level of the central story, and some episodes in the second half lose a little focus, but the tenderness with which it treats its characters more than makes up for it. The protagonist's mother steals entire scenes. Number 24, Woman of Dignity. At the top of Korean society, everything looks flawless. Designer clothes, enormous houses, perfect smiles for the cameras. An Jae-hee lives inside all of that and has everything on the surface until Park Bok-ja, a new caretaker with a modest appearance and calculated manners, enters her life and begins moving the pieces on the board without anyone quite noticing. What seems like a simple employee turns out to be something far harder to figure out, and the closer Jae-hee gets to understanding her, the more she realizes her entire world was more fragile than she thought. Kim Hee-ae builds Jae-hee with layers that reveal themselves episode by episode, and Kim Sun-ah as Bok-ja is magnetic in every scene she appears in. It's a pleasure to hate her and admire her at the same time. The direction is precise, the dialogue has an edge, and every episode ending leaves you needing to open the next one. There are moments where the melodrama goes a little overboard, but if you enjoy stories of power, manipulation, and women who don't back down, this drama is exactly what you're looking for. Number 23, A Poem a Day. Bo Young dreamed of being a poet but ended up as a physical therapist, and yet she found that patience, the gestures of everyday life, and the silences of a hospital hold more poetry than she ever imagined. She works in rehabilitation alongside doctors, nurses, and radiologists who also carry their own stories, and each episode delivers a small poem that captures exactly what ordinary words can't quite say. When Dr. Ye-jae enters the picture with his particular way of seeing things, something starts to shift in the routine Bo Young thought she knew by heart. What makes this drama great is its stillness. It doesn't need giant conflicts or dramatic twists. To make you feel something, small moments treated with great care are enough. Lee Yoo-bi and Jang Dong-yoon build one of those relationships that grows slowly, with mutual respect and admiration, without anything ever feeling forced. Some episodes are slower than others, but the OST is wonderful, and the authenticity of the whole thing is hard to find in another drama of the same genre. Number 22, Temperature of Love. It all starts with two people who find each other online before meeting in person, and when the real world arrives, the connection that already existed begins to complicate itself in ways neither of them expected. An Jung is a television screenwriter who left a stable job to chase what she really wants to write. Hyun Soo is a chef who keeps his restaurant running on willpower more than stability, with emotional scars that make him hard to reach even when he clearly wants to be reached. Between the two of them, there's real attraction, but also pride, fear, and that always badly timed moment when priorities don't line up. Yang Se-jong and Se-hun Jin work really well together, with that restrained tension that makes every reunion feel like something worth waiting for. The drama has 40 episodes, and that shows in some stretches of the middle that go on longer than needed, but its honesty in showing adult love with its real doubts and second chances is what sets it apart from more conventional romances. Number 21, Age of Youth. 5 university girls share a house, and also, without looking for it, their deepest fears. The house is called Belle Epoque, and has a reputation for being haunted, which turns out to be the least of their worries compared to everything each of them carries inside. One has a past she can't tell anyone about. Another is stuck in something she doesn't know how to get out of. They all seem fine from the outside, and they all lie a little when someone asks how they're doing. The curious thing is that the ghost is real, and each girl perceives it differently, as if the building itself knows which trauma each one still hasn't processed. The series starts with the tone of a college comedy and gradually pulls you into something far more emotional without you noticing exactly when the shift happens. The cast has a chemistry that feels genuine, the OST is nostalgic in the best way, and each individual story has enough weight to stand on its own. If you identified with any of the girls, and it's very likely you will, the final episodes are going to hit you right where it hurts. Number 20, Hyde Jekyll, Me. Gu Seojin is the cold, controlling heir of a major conglomerate, the kind of man who measures every word and every gesture, so he never loses command of any situation. But when something pushes him to his emotional limit, Robin appears. A second personality that is sweet, warm, and completely opposite, and who doesn't even remember what the other one does. Han Ji-an is a circus director who refuses to shut down her show under Sejin's pressure, and ends up being the person who connects these two men who share the same body without sharing anything else. Hyun Bin does remarkable work, differentiating both personalities convincingly. It's one of those performances where you forget you're watching the same actor. Han Ji-min handles well the weight of being caught between two versions of someone who needs her in different ways. The story loses a little momentum in the second half, and the ending doesn't satisfy everyone, but the premise is original enough and the central performance strong enough to make the whole journey worthwhile. Number 20, Hyde Jekyll, Me. Gu Seojin is the cold, controlling heir of a major conglomerate, the kind of man who measures every word and every gesture, so he never loses command of any situation. But when something pushes him to his emotional limit, Robin appears. A second personality that is sweet, warm, and completely opposite, and who doesn't even remember what the other one does. Han Ji-an is a circus director who refuses to shut down her show under Sejin's pressure, and ends up being the person who connects these two men who share the same body without sharing anything else. Hyun Bin does remarkable work, differentiating both personalities convincingly. It's one of those performances where you forget you're watching the same actor. Han Ji-min handles well the weight of being caught between two versions of someone who needs her in different ways. The story loses a little momentum in the second half, and the ending doesn't satisfy everyone, but the premise is original enough and the central performance strong enough to make the whole journey worthwhile. Number 18, $1 Lawyer. Imagine this. A brilliant lawyer who charges exactly $1 per case shows up in court with a retro perm and clothes that look pulled from a thrift store, and dismantles elite law firms with arguments no one saw coming. Cheon Ji-hoon doesn't look like a star of the legal world, but behind that eccentric image is a past that explains why he defends ordinary people against those who have all the power and all the resources of the system on their side. His new intern, Ma Yi-dam, who comes from a family of respected lawyers, can't understand how this man can exist, let alone how he keeps winning. Nam Gung-min carries the entire drama on his back, capable of making you burst out laughing in one scene and leaving you with a lump in your throat in the next. The combination of comedy and social commentary works better than it looks on paper, and the pace is sharp from beginning to end. Ji-hoon's backstory is revealed slowly and carries far more emotional weight than you'd expect when you sit down to watch the first episode. Number 17. Heard It Through the Grapevine. Everything falls apart one day when Seo Bam, an ordinary girl from a modest family, gets pregnant by the son of one of the most powerful families in Korea. Han In-sang, the heir in question, decides to bring her home. And what follows is a clash of worlds so absurd and so sharply observed that you sometimes don't know whether to laugh or feel deeply uncomfortable. The boy's parents try to keep up appearances with an almost comedic coldness, while everything they've built on the inside starts to crack. This series is a ferocious satire of Korean classism wrapped in black comedy, and it executes it with a precision few dramas reach. The supporting cast, especially the mansion's domestic staff, constantly steals scenes and adds a layer of humor that perfectly relieves the heavier moments. It has 30 episodes, and that can feel long in some stretches, but the writing stays sharp and the tone never loses its bite. It's bold, original, and far deeper than it lets on. Number 16. Dazzling. Haija is a young woman full of dreams and a magic watch that lets her turn back time. When she decides to use it to save her father from an accident, the price she pays wakes her up in the body of a 70-year-old woman with no one around her recognizing who she is. The journalist, Lee Jun-ha, someone she was just beginning to connect with, suddenly looks at her as if she were a stranger, and she has to decide what to do with a life that keeps moving forward in the wrong body. What looks like a light fantasy drama becomes something far more emotional and complex as the episodes go on, with a final twist that splits the experience of watching it in two. Han Ji-min and Nam Joo-hyuk have a genuine connection that makes their scenes together some of the most natural you'll ever see, and Kim Haija in the role of the older Haija delivers a performance that's hard to forget. Prepare yourself emotionally for the final episodes. This drama knows exactly where to hit. Number 15. My Lovely Liar. What would you do if you could hear every time someone lies to you, but there's one single person in the world whose lies you can't detect? Sol Hee has spent years carrying that gift that actually works like a curse, because when you hear lies all the time, trusting anyone becomes nearly impossible. Kim Do-ha is a music producer who lives locked inside his apartment running from rumors linking him to a person's disappearance, and who turns out to be the only human being whose voice Sol Hee can't read. Kim So-hyun and Hwang Min-hyun have a dynamic that moves from distrust to affection with a naturalness that hooks you from the first few episodes. The mystery thriller element gives the story a brisk pace that keeps it from feeling like just another conventional romance. And the supporting characters, especially the best friend and the detective, add warmth and humor to the mix. The ending may not surprise genre veterans, but the road to get there is genuinely enjoyable. Number 14. Misty. Go Hai-ran built her career story by story, sacrificing almost everything to become the most respected news anchor in Korean television, the kind of woman who walks into a room and changes it without saying a single word. But a murder connected to her past turns her into the prime suspect, and suddenly everything she built over the years could crumble in a matter of days. Her husband, Kang Tae-wook, a successful attorney, has to decide whether to defend the woman he shares a bed with or the truth he may not want to know. Kim Nam-joo delivers a performance that is a masterclass in building a complex character without apologizing for it. The setting is elegant, the cinematography has a visual care that few thriller dramas match, and the tension between the leads is the kind you could cut with a knife. The crime thread has some loose ends, and the detective assigned to the case is clearly the weakest link in the entire production, but the central drama about power, loyalty, and the price of ambition holds everything together effortlessly. The ending sparks debate, and that's part of its merit. Number 13. Chocolate. It all starts with a shared childhood through food, a sick boy in a hospital, and a little girl who brings him chocolate to make the wait a little easier. Years later, Moon Cha-young became a chef and Lee Kang a neurosurgeon, and when their lives cross again at a hospice caring for people in their final days, something from that old connection returns, transformed into something harder to name. What surrounds them is pain, farewell, and the last wishes of patients who know time is running out, and in that environment, Cha-young's cooking becomes a way of saying what words can't reach. Yoon Kai-sang and Ha Ji-won build a relationship that isn't in a rush and feels honest, precisely because it doesn't try to shine too bright. The drama treats death and grief with a sensitivity that's rarely seen, never falling into easy melodrama, and that demands patience from the viewer. The pace is slow, the atmosphere is melancholic, and the OST, especially the main theme, is the kind that plants itself in your head for weeks. If you're looking for something quiet that touches you without asking you to cry out loud, this is the right choice. Number 12. Be melodramatic. Three women in their 30s working in the entertainment industry, carrying dreams that sometimes feel too heavy and lives that didn't turn out exactly as planned. Im Jin-ju is a screenwriter with the habit of talking to inanimate objects in her own internal logic that is equal parts hilarious and endearing. Han-ju is a single mother trying to balance raising a child with a career that demands everything. Yoo Yoon-jung is a documentary filmmaker who suddenly becomes famous for reasons she didn't expect and doesn't quite know how to handle. What binds them is a friendship that works as an anchor when everything else starts to wobble. This drama is meta in the best sense. It works in the industry that produces the K-dramas we watch, and that gives it a very intelligent internal irony. It handles depression, grief, toxic relationships, and same-sex love with a lightness that trivializes nothing. The OST is one of the best of the year it came out. It may not be for everyone because the pace is quiet and the conflicts are more everyday than dramatic, but if what you're looking for is to feel accompanied on screen, few series pull it off this well. Number 11. Just Between Lovers. Imagine this. A shopping mall collapses on an ordinary day, leaving 48 people dead and 3 survivors who have spent years carrying that weight without knowing they're going to cross paths again. Moon-soo lost her little sister in the collapse. Kang-do was waiting for his father, who never made it out. Years later, she works as an architect on the reconstruction project for that very site, and he takes odd jobs however he can, with physical and emotional scars he doesn't hide, but doesn't explain either. What grows between them isn't hopeful right away, it's awkward, painful, and completely honest. Lee Joon-ho delivers a performance that doesn't ask permission to make you feel everything his character carries, and Won Jin-ah builds Moon-soo with a quiet fragility that feels real in every scene. This drama doesn't rely on grand gestures or clean resolutions. It's about two people learning to be together without that erasing what happened to them. The pace is slow and it isn't always easy to watch, but if you're willing to sit with something that doesn't serve everything pre-digested, the emotional payoff is enormous. Number 10. My Liberation Notes. On the outskirts of Seoul, far from the noise and the dreams, 3 adult siblings repeat the same cycle every day. Wake up, take the train, work, come home, sleep. Mi-jung, Chang-hee, and Ki-jung live with their parents and carry in their bodies that feeling of being trapped without being able to name exactly what's holding them there. A mysterious man arrives in the neighborhood with a past he doesn't reveal and a way of moving through the world that sets him apart from everyone else, and his presence starts stirring things that had been still for a long time. This drama asks you to sit with discomfort for a while, and then, without you noticing, has you completely absorbed in its characters. It has no grand revelations or spectacular twists. It has something harder to pull off: authenticity. Every line of dialogue sounds like it came from a real conversation, and the portrait of ordinary life has a restrained poetry that few dramas ever reach. If you're looking for fast pace and high volume emotion, this isn't your drama, but if you give it the time, it's the kind that changes something. Number 9. Page Turner. Yoo Sol has spent her entire life playing piano under the weight of a mother who turned her talent into an obligation. Every practice session, every competition, every free moment has the name of another trophy to win. A sudden accident leaves her unable to see, and what everyone assumes is the end of her career turns out to be the beginning of something she never expected. Cha-sik, a sprinter with more energy than direction and a personality that clashes with everything, ends up becoming her sheet music reader at the most inconvenient moments. And out of that constant friction, something grows that neither of them quite knows how to define. Kim So-hyun is entirely convincing as someone learning to let go of an identity she didn't entirely choose, and Jisoo gives Cha-sik a lightness that perfectly balances the more emotional moments. It's very short, which means everything moves fast, maybe too fast in some moments, but there's an honesty in its story about pressure, sacrifice, and freedom that hits far harder than its runtime would suggest. Number 8. The smile has left your eyes. There's something about Kim Moo-young that attracts and unsettles at the same time. He's charming without trying, indifferent without apparent cruelty, and has the kind of gaze that suggests he knows more about you than you'd like. When he crosses paths with Yoo-jin Kang, a simple girl with a quiet life, something starts moving in ways that her brother, Detective Yoo-jin Gook, recognizes as dangerous. He's convinced Moo-young has something to do with an unresolved death, and that investigation puts all three of them in a tension that builds episode by episode. Seo In-guk builds Moo-young with an ambiguity that is genuinely hard to figure out. You don't know whether to hate him, understand him, or want things to work out for him, and that confusion is exactly what keeps you glued to the screen. The romance is visceral and complex, not the kind that gives you warmth, but the kind that puts you on edge. The ending divides opinions deeply and won't satisfy everyone, but the experience of getting there is one of the most intense the genre has to offer. Number 7. Go Back Couple. Choi Bando and Ma Jin-jo have been married for years and have spent almost that same amount of time forgetting why they ever loved each other. Arguments are the language of the home, indifference is the backdrop, and the only question floating in the air is how much longer before someone says it out loud. When something inexplicable sends them back to their 20s the same year they first met, both of them get the chance nobody gets to revisit their story from before it started to break. What makes this drama different isn't the time travel itself, but what it does with it. It doesn't use the device to create easy emotion. It uses it to show two people learning to see their own blind spots, to forgive mistakes they didn't know they were making, and to understand that the people they are today might not be so different from the ones who chose each other 20 years ago. Jang Nara and Son Ho-jun have a chemistry that feels like people who genuinely know each other, and the nostalgia of the soundtrack makes everything land a little harder. Number 6. One Spring Night. It all starts with an encounter at a pharmacy at an hour when no one should be paying that much attention to anything, and yet something happens. Lee Jung-in is in a stable relationship that should work, and for reasons she can't quite explain, it doesn't feel like enough. Jae-ho is a pharmacist, a single father with a simple life, and a way of listening that makes talking to him feel different from talking to anyone else. It isn't a movie love. It's the kind of connection that shows up when your life is already organized around something else and forces you to ask questions you'd rather not ask. Han Ji-min and Jung Hae-in build one of the most natural couples in the Korean catalog, with scenes that feel filmed in real time. The direction is poetic without being pretentious, and the cinematography turns everyday spaces into something worth watching slowly. It has 32 episodes, and the pace is deliberately slow, which can be an obstacle for viewers who prefer more action, but every quiet moment between them carries more emotional weight than many other dramas' climaxes. Number 5. 30. But 17. Imagine this. You wake up from a 13-year coma, and the world kept going without you. Woo Seo-ri was a 16-year-old violinist with dreams and a first love that never got said out loud, and suddenly she's 30, with a body that grew up but a life experience that stayed frozen in adolescence. Gong Woo-jin is the only person who knows what happened to her that day, carries a guilt that's gone unresolved for over a decade, and has been so locked inside that guilt that he stopped truly living. When she walks into his life without knowing who he is, what grows between them doesn't have an easy name. Yang Se-jong and Shin Hae-soon have an on-screen tenderness that makes every step forward in their relationship feel earned, not given. The drama blends the lightness of comedy with moments of an emotion that arrives without warning and without exaggeration. The early episodes can feel lighter than the story's undercurrent suggests, but once the connection between the leads takes shape, the drama becomes very hard to put down. It ends with a warmth that few dramas manage without slipping into the saccharine. Number 4. Mad for Each Other. Hwao and Min Kyung meet fighting in their apartment building hallway, and from that very first second, it's clear that both of them are broken in different but compatible ways. He has a rage he doesn't fully control and a complicated past with the police. She carries anxiety that makes it hard to trust almost anything or anyone. They both see the same psychiatrist who doesn't know their neighbors, and the irony that two people who can barely manage themselves become the reason the other tries to do better is the heart of the whole story. Yoon Moon-suk and Oh Yeon-seo build a dynamic that is explosive and at the same time genuinely tender, with an honesty about mental health that few romantic comedies dare to show without ridiculing it. The drama knows that the road to getting better is uneven and shows it without filters, with humor when it calls for it, and weight when it calls for that. Not everyone will be satisfied with the pace of the ending, but the authenticity of the characters and how well they work together make the whole journey completely worth it. Number 3. Flower of Evil. Baek Hee-sung seems to have it all: a stable marriage, an adorable daughter, and a life built with patience. But behind that perfect facade is a stolen identity, a dark past, and a question with no easy answer. Can someone who faked everything from the beginning feel something real? His wife, Cha Ji-won, is a detective investigating a case that, without realizing it, is bringing her closer and closer to the truth about the man she shares her life with. Every clue she uncovers makes the ground beneath her feet a little less stable. This drama earns its spot at number 3 because it does something few manage. It maintains the thriller's tension and the depth of the romance at the same level throughout its entire runtime without sacrificing either. Lee Joon-ki builds his character with a precision that throws you off. He portrays a man who doesn't know whether what he feels is real or learned. Moon Chae-won as Ji-won is equally powerful, and their love story is the kind that hurts precisely because it shouldn't work, and yet it does. The final episodes may divide opinions, but the tension it sustains throughout the series is some of the best the genre has to offer. Number 2. When the Camellia Blooms. Dong-baek arrived in a small town with nothing but her son, and the determination to build something of her own. She opened a bar called Camellia, and from day one the whole town judged her without knowing her, because in places where everyone knows everything, a single mother always has something to explain. Hwang Young-sik is the local cop, the kind of man who says exactly what he thinks, who loves with a transparency that borders on uncomfortable, and who decided Dong-baek was the person he wanted before she ever considered it possible. When the Camellia Blooms earns the number 2 spot because it's one of the most complete dramas in the recent Korean catalog. It's not just the romance between Gong Hyo-jin and Kang Ha-neul, who translate on screen in a way that makes every scene together feel completely real. It's also the portrait of an entire town with its fears and its contradictions, the threat of a serial killer that adds tension without stealing focus from the emotional story, and the construction of Dong-baek as one of the most complex and lovable female characters of recent years. It feels big without trying to be. Number 1. Jealousy Incarnate. Imagine this. An arrogant news anchor who is convinced the world revolves around him discovers he has breast cancer as a man, and the only person who knows it first is the weather girl who has been quietly in love with him for years, without him ever bothering to notice. Pyeonari is hardworking, persistent, and has been watching Lee Hwa-shin from the shadows for far too long. Hwa-shin is brilliant, intense, and carries an ego the size of a building, but this new vulnerability forces him to see things in a way he never expected. This series takes the top spot because it does something no other drama on this list does quite the same way. It talks about masculinity, illness, jealousy, and ego without losing its humor or its humanity. Jo Jung-suk as Hwa-shin is a performance you enjoy in every single scene, capable of being insufferable and magnetic at the same time, and Gong Hyo-jin proves once again why she's one of the best at what she does. It has 24 episodes and the pace can stretch in some stretches, but the whole thing is so original and so well executed that every minute justifies itself. If you're only going to watch one drama from this list, make it this one. 30 dramas that deserve far more noise than they ever got. Some are going to surprise you, others are going to break you in two, and at least one will probably move in and stay with you without asking permission. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave your like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our next content. Let me know in the comments which of these you've already seen and which ones just made it onto your list. See you in the next video.